Hi there. I thought I would not play those dialogues here. I mean, once you understand this model of mine, the one and only flat earth model, you'll find all the religious scripts, ancient mythologies, anything, all speak of this design. This being the actual image, and we seeing reflections and projections out here. And they speak of this gap here. Oh, the one that really freaked me out was this. This video just came out on YouTube. Vatican Codex of Maya released. You only have to listen to it for 5-10 minutes, and it describes this whole system. The southern hemisphere, northern hemisphere, and the gap. This gap here. This is where all the magic happens. All the religions and myths are all about this gap. Specifically in the springtime, what happens there? What goes on? What comes out of there? It's the magic we're getting into at the moment with the two magnetic fields, opposing fields, and the third entity in between that comes out of there. This is where the free energy is going to come from. But all sorts, Nordic, Christian, anything. It's all in there. Christian one was the Desire of Ages. Helped me with this model. All the Egyptian Hermeticums, whatever they call them. Plato, Book of the Dead and all that sort of stuff. They talk of the two skies. You know, you got this rotation here, and that rotation, the two skies. There's obviously a gap there. I thought I'd just read Plato's, the Republic, Book 7, about the analogy, they call it analogy of the cave or something. So for those who haven't read it before, I'll just read a couple of pages. It's quite interesting about the reflections and education. So here we go. Next said I, compare our nature in respect of education and its lack to such an experience as this. So straight off they're saying, talk about education, it's basically a BS. You'll never learn anything like this. You won't learn the truth through education. You're sent into an indoctrination camp at 5 years old. You spend 8 to 10 years there, completely wasting your time. Maybe learning a bit of math, but and reading and writing, but other than that, you could learn anywhere. You can learn reading and writing from home within a few months. Maths, you need to get private tuition, but spending 8 to 10 years and coming out of there with about this much compared to what you've wasted. So straight away it's on to education. So picture men dwelling in a sort of subterranean cavern with a long entrance, open to the light on its entire length. So imagine we're in here, we're inside the donut, okay, the physical donut. The centre ring is here, it's non-physical. That's where all our existence comes from. That's the tree of life there that we do not see. But we're inside the donut. We're inside the donut, but there's light. There's light all the way around it. But it's coming from the centre, from behind us. We're out here, it's behind us. So it's saying the light is shining in here, but it's behind us. Conceive them as having their legs and necks fettered from childhood, so they remain in the same spot, able to look forward only, prevented by the fetters from turning their heads. Picture further the light from a fire burning higher up and at a distance behind them, and between them the fire and the prisoners, and above them a road long which a low wall has been built, as the exhibitors of puppet shows have petitioned before the men themselves, above which they show the puppets. So you're in here, the light's behind you, you're looking at the wall. and you're seeing, and you only see above a wall here. What's above the wall? That's the firmament, that's the sky, ancestral bodies and everything. Because the wall is blocking your view, which is your arc of horizon. You can only see so far. I mean, if you climb up, you see over the wall, don't you? The higher you go, the more you can see. So we all have our own arc of horizon. You block, but you see the celestial bodies all above in your dome. You're set in your dome, your arc of horizon. All that I see, he said. See also then men carrying past the wall implements of all kinds that rise above the wall, and human images and shapes of animals as well, wrought in stone and wood and every material. Some of these bearers presumably speaking and others silent. So he's talking about the constellations. He says stones and wood. I'm assuming the stones representing fine minerals and particles, whatever, of the glistening colours and stuff. But wood being an amplifier, you're carving out wood, you can amplify sounds. It's all about frequencies. Like a guitar amplifies the frequencies. And that's all, they say all other materials, but it's probably just all the minerals, I suppose. That's what I put it down to anyway. And some presumably speaking and others silent. It's the frequency. Some go off for frequency, some don't. Everything in our world is about frequencies. A strange image you speak of, he said, and strange prisoners. Like to us, I said, for to begin with. Tell me, do you think that these men would have seen anything of themselves or of one another except the shadows cast from the fire on the wall of the cave that fronted them? In other words, they're not seeing anything. All they're seeing is the shadows on the wall from the sun that's shining behind them. And notice he says, men that we were once. So he's enlightened, he's woken up, he's seen the light. That's what all religions are all about. It's the meaning to life, waking up and seeing the light, coming to the light. While all the other ignoramuses, the common man, just starts looking at the shadows and believing that's real. How could they, he said, if they were compelled to hold their heads unmoved through life? And again, would not the same be true of the objects carried past them? So he's basically saying man will think all those objects, everything passing by them is real. Surely. If then they were able to talk to one another, do you not think that they would suppose that in naming the things that they saw, they were naming the passing objects? You know, they think they're real, they're naming them all. Oh yeah, there's something. Oh yeah, a billion miles away. I'm a scientist, I'm a physicist. Yeah, it's 25 million billion miles away. Yeah. Necessarily, answered whoever he's talking to. If then they were able, here we go. And if their prison had an echo from the wall opposite them, when one of the passers by uttered a sound, do you think that they would suppose anything else than the passing shadow to be the speaker? So they're hearing sounds and it's echoing off this wall they're looking at, and they're assuming the sounds are coming from here. And all the frequencies come out of here. By Zeus I do not, he said. Then in every way such prisoners would deem reality to be nothing else than the shadows of the artificial objects. So true, says Lindsay. Consider then, what would be the manner of the release and healing from these bonds and this folly if in the course of nature something of this sort should happen to them? That means if they woke up, saw reality. When one was freed from his fetters and compelled to stand up suddenly and turn his head around and walk and to lift up his eyes to the light, and in doing all this felt pain, and because of his dazzle and glitter of the light was unable to discern the objects whose shadows he formerly saw. He's looking back into the light now. He can't discern anything. He's just used to looking at all the shadows. He's used to believing all the bullshit, all the mainstream media. What do you suppose would be his answer if someone told him that what he had seen before was all a cheat and an illusion? Well, he wouldn't believe you. He'd come onto Lindsay's site and start abusing him, thinking telling him he's full of crap. That's what they'd do. If they could, if it was a couple of 100 years ago, they'd probably want to burn me at the stake. But that now, being nearer to reality and turned towards more real things. Real things, what he's looking at now, he's woken up. He sees the truth. He knows the sun's not 93 million miles away. He saw more truly. And if also one should point out to him each of the passing objects and constrain him by questions to say that what it is, do you not think that he would be at a loss, and that he would regard what he formerly saw as mere real than the things now pointed out to him? He only knows of what he knows. He only knows what he knew. So we tend to think this is real, man. I can't see what's going on here. That's beyond me. I don't understand him. I don't understand that, Lindsay. Far more real, replied the person. And if he were compelled to look at the light itself, would not that pain his eyes? And would he not turn away and flee to those things which he is able to discern, and regard them as in very deed more clearer and exact than the objects pointed out? Now what he's saying here is we can't see things, can we, if we look directly at the sun? We don't see the sun tucked into the Milky Way. You see nothing but the bright light. So everything is reflected out of here for us to see. So we need to look there. But don't get confused with that, with the freaking being old school and thinking all that's real. You get what I mean? He saw more really, where am I up to? Just passing object, constrain him to question it. And if he were compelled to look at the very deed more clearer than. And if said I, someone should drag him thence by force up the ascent, which is rough and steep, and not let him go before he had drawn him out into the light of the sun, do you not think that he would find it painful to be so haled along, and would chafe at it? And when he came out into the light, that his eyes would be filled with its beams, so that he would not be able to see even one of the things that we call real. So this is like trying to convince a spinning baller that the world's is flat. It's going to be hard initially for him. He's just going to refuse it all. So they talk about down here in a cabin, bringing you out to the light. Why? No, not immediately, he said. Then there would be need for habitation. There would be need of habituation. I take it, to enable him to see the things higher up. Okay, get used to it. And at first he would most easily discern the shadows, and after that the likeness of reflections in water of men and other things, and later the things themselves, and from these he would go on to contemplate the appearances in the heavens and heavens itself more easily by night, looking at the light of the stars and the moon, than by day the sun and the sun's light. Of course, replied whoever it was. And so finally, I suppose, we would be able to look upon the sun itself and see its true nature, not by reflections in water or phantasms of it in an alien setting, but in and by itself in its own place, necessarily, he said. So, in a roundabout way, everything we see up here is through the firmament. It's all moisture, different atmospheric layers of moisture. And we see what's going on back in here by night. The reflection, whatever's in there, is amplified out and reflected on the night sky out here. Okay, moving on. And at this point he would infer and conclude that it is that things in that visible region. And I'll start that again. And at this point he would infer and conclude that it is that provides the seasons and the courses of the year and presides over all things in the visible region, and is in some sort the cause of all these things that they have seen. In other words, it's all there because of this. Obviously, he said, that would be the next step. Well then, he said, that would be the well then, if he recalled to mind his first habitation and what passed for wisdom there, and his fellow bondsmen, do you not think that he would count himself happy in the change and pity them? So he's woken up, he's seen the real light, and he's just pitying these common folk still looking at the reflections in the cave here, believing that to be real. He would indeed. And if there had been honours and commendations among them which they bestowed on one another, and prizes for the man who quickest to make out the shadows, and they pass and best able to remember their customary precedences, sequences and coexistences, and so most successful in guessing at what was to come, do you think he would be very keen about such rewards, and that he would envy and emulate those who were honoured by those prisoners and lauded it among them, or that he would feel with Homer and greatly prefer while living on earth to be serf of another, a landless man, and endure anything rather than opine with them and live that life? Yes, he said, I think that he would choose to endure anything rather than such a life. And consider this also, said I, if such a one should go down again and take his old place, would he not get his eyes full of darkness, thus suddenly becoming out of the sunlight? He would indeed. So he's got a choice. Now you've been woken up. Do you want to go along with these common folk and all the scientists and physicists and be counting all this particular garbage that's going on out here, or actually knowing the real stuff back here? You know, you don't have to know the specifics out here, but in saying that, you do end up knowing the basics, but not all this drama that you physicists and scientists are talking about all the time, all sorts of garbage. You know the truth now. You're in here. There's no way you want to go back there. Right, where are we? And if there would be honour, now, if he should be required to contend with these perpetual prisoners in evaluating their shadows while his vision was still dim, and before his eyes were accustomed to the dark, and this time required for habituation would not be very short, would he not provoke laughter? And would it not be And would it not be said of him that he had returned from his journey aloft with his eyes ruined, and that it was not worthwhile event to attempt the ascent, and if it were possible to lay hands on to kill the man who tried to release them and lead them up, would they not kill him? They certainly would, he said. So he's gone up and he's come back, and he knows how ridiculous they are, and he'd laugh at them. But they think he's the turkey, he's the fool, and they'd want to kill him. They burn him at the stake. They have no understanding of reality. They certainly would, he said. This image then, dear Glaucon, this is supposed to be Plato's son or something, isn't it? I don't know. We must apply as a whole to all that has been said, likely in the region revealed through sight to the habitation of the prisoner, and the light of the fire in it to the power of the sun. And if you assume that the ascent and the contemplation of the things above is the soul's ascension to the intelligible region, you will not miss my surmise, since that is what you desire to hear. But God knows whether it is true. But at any rate, my dream, as it appears to me, is that in the region of the known, the last thing to be seen and hardly seen is the idea of good, and that when seen it must need point us to the conclusion that this indeed the cause of all things, of all that is right and beautiful, giving birth in the visible world to light, and the author of light in itself in the intelligible world being the authentic source of truth and reason, and that anyone is to act wisely in private or public must have caught sight of this. I concur, he said, so far as I am able. So, forget what I just read. Birth, can't explain it, but I just forgot what I read. I concur, he said. Come then, I said. Well, basically it's about, this is the real world. It's waking up, it's the enlightenment. Come then, I said, and join me in the further thought, and do not be surprised that those who have attained to this height are not willing to occupy themselves with the affairs of men, but their souls ever feel the upward urge and the yearning for that should sojourn above. For this, I take it, is likely, if in this point to the likeness of our image holds. To our likeness of our image holds. The sun. Our image is created by the sun. Yes, it is likely. And again, do you think it is all strange, said I, if a man returning from divine contemplations to the petty miseries of men cuts a sorry figure and appears most ridiculous? If, while still blinking through the gloom and before he has become sufficiently accustomed to the environment darkness, he is compelled in courtrooms or elsewhere to contend about the shadows of justice or the images that cast the shadow, and to wrangle and debate about the notions of these things in the minds of those who have never seen justice itself. So you hear arguing about the truth, and these people got no idea. They've never seen the truth. It would be my means strange, he said. But a sensible man, I said, would remember that there are two distinct disturbances of the eyes, arising from two causes, according as the shift is from light to darkness or from darkness to light, and believing that the same thing happens to the soul too. Whenever he saw a soul perturbed and unable to discern something, he would not laugh unthinkingly, but would observe whether coming from a brighter life its vision was obscured by the unfamiliar darkness, or whether the passage from the deeper dark of ignorance into a more luminous world, and the greater brightness had dazzled his wisdom, and so he would deem the one happy in its experience and way of life, and pity the other, and if it pleased him to laugh at it, his laughter would be less laughable than that at the expense of the soul that had come down from the light above. That is a very fair statement, he said. Then, if this is true, our view of these matters must be that education is not in reality what some people proclaim it to be in their professions. What they aver is that they can put true knowledge into a soul that does not possess it, as if they were inserting vision into the blind. It's inner, it's your instincts and everything, just knowing, understanding the truth. But now we're just clogged, people are clogged with education, the false indoctrination stuffed into their brains. No room for natural instincts. They do indeed, he said. But our present argument indicates, said I, that the true analogy of this indwelling power in the soul and the instrument whereby each of us apprehends is that of an eye that could not be converted to the light from the darkness except by turning the whole body. Even so, this organ of knowledge must be turned around from the world to becoming together with the entire soul, like the scene shift. It just goes on, and it just goes on.